Angela.
Hi.
It's Peter Giblett here with Angela Browne, and we are here for Spin Legal. So this is your weekly dose of things legal, and today we're going to be talking about something that's not inside the paralegal scope, but sometimes I wish it were. You know, so we're going to be talking about class action lawsuits. So just briefly, if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so on 905-688-5598. Email Angelo at weareinvictus.legal or myself at peter@weareinvictus.legal, or go visit our website at weareinvictus.legal. There you go. Okay, and so our topic of the day is, what is a class action lawsuit and how can I get involved?
Well, a class action lawsuit is something very specific in legislation, and I'll tell you what it is not. It is not like when tenants all file a case against a landlord for maintenance in a building. That's not a class action lawsuit, but it is a joint action by tenants in the landlord-tenant board. Nor is it a class action lawsuit when we file different cases against the same defendant, because we all have different cases. Although that can happen, we can jointly still sue, but it's
I was going to say there's a point at which, you may be suing. I don't know, nothing against them. Hey, you might be suing McDonald's. I might be suing McDonald's. Joseph might be suing McDonald's, etc., 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 and it only becomes a class action if we're joint in terms of there's some rules about how
there has to be some rules applied.
Yeah.
For example, there was a time, like a good example, for example, is during the 60s and the 50s, everybody thought smoking was good for you.
Yeah.
So everybody started taking up smoking. You have advertisements where you have obstetricians smoke, and they recommend it to pregnant women. And they recommend it for people to help lose weight and stuff like that. So people started smoking. And then in school, people started smoking. And then everybody started saying, oh, well, this is fine. But sooner or later, people started finding themselves addicted to it. And then they started finding a rise in the case of lung cancer, which went way up. In there, and then they started tying it to smoking. Although the tobacco companies, I don't know if even to this day they ever want to publicly admit that they caused this and that they've actually published.
But again, the primary drive for class action lawsuits has come from the United States, and in fact, to be quite honest, and smoking is the prime one, but how they function in Canada is different than how they function in the USA. And in fact, actually, in the terms of how they create a class are different in the USA than they are in Canada.
Yeah.
And it's the same true for England, because in fact, in Britain, it's not really a class action lawsuit in the way that we name them here. There are some lawsuits that are because of breaches to competition law and the like.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but there's not typical class action lawsuits don't function in many jurisdictions.
Yeah, but it is interesting with class actions, because they did do a Class Action Proceedings Act, which is available in Ontario and in other provinces, where people would have something in common. You have to have the same defendant or defendants as a group.
Yeah.
And you have to be something in common. You have to have an issue in common, like cigarette smoking. You're all now discovering that it's causing cancer, or you have emphysema and other kinds of conditions. And you need to show that you were a long-time smoker, that you developed this, and when you started smoking, you didn't know anything about this.
Yeah. And again, I think that in terms of smoking, for example, the class action lawsuits happened in the 60s and 70s for the smoking era, I'd say for the majority of people who started smoking, who their first time they ever smoked a cigarette was in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, hey, there's a leaflet there's a thing on there that says smoking kills.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Your chances of getting a class action lawsuit underway when the label says smoking kills, good luck.
Yeah, like I always say, cigarettes cause cancer. Help yourself.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, people know that, and they are either willfully ignorant of it or, willfully blind of it. It's there for anybody to read. And in a way, you kind of say, well, why would, nobody should be winning class action lawsuits in today. Okay, so we know that the term comes from the USA. There's been some classic ones in the USA. I followed this one about ladders. This person actually lent a ladder against the house where a power cable was connecting to the house, and electrocuted themselves.
Oh, wow.
But there was not one lawsuit. This happened thousands of times. And a metal ladder, and to me it's kind of obvious. It's a metal ladder.
Yeah.
Right? It's a steel ladder.
It's a conductor.
It's a conductor of electricity, and I'm putting the ladder up against a wire that's bare. You've got to be out of your mind to think that's going to work. Right? It's some of these things you've got to wonder, right? But that turned into a class action lawsuit.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So as we just said, things operate in Canada, but again, I think with some of these lawsuits, you got to think a bit rationally about them, haven't you?
Yeah, like they have to, like, say for instance, if there is a legal solution, there has to be a legal resolution that would happen at the same time for the people in the lawsuit. Okay, so it's not something where, oh, Sally got affected this way, but Bill got affected that way. No, it has to be something where, okay, these people got cancer, people had different things. Let's resolve it by compensating people.
Yeah.
Okay, there may be levels of compensation that may differ. Like for the residential schools, for example, there was a lawsuit in Canada with respect to the residential schools, where people who've been to them and have been abused by them and have come out of them and maybe perhaps didn't quite be themselves and needed remedies, counseling support, financial support, getting back to relive their culture again, to be reconnected to their culture, and different things that they have lost as a result of being forced to attend a residential school. And there was there was another lawsuit around that, and that were people who were Indigenous who were just taken away from their families and then forced into children's services and raised by white families. So this is another form of residential schools, except through the children's services system. So these are things that have actually happened, and people have filed lawsuits. These are people who have gone through similar circumstances with similar results and with the same defendants, that have done this again and again. Mostly things that were policy that people might have agreed with at one time. They might have thought that this was a great idea.
We were just talking on the show beforehand, to take something innocent, innocuous that we might consider today to be perfectly healthy, but yet in 10, 15 years' time, and half the people, 10% of the population of Canada imbues whatever it is, right? But in 10 or 15 years' time, we find out that actually what we considered healthy in the 2020s, by the 2040s, is kind of, oh, why the hell did you ever do that? We did it because we thought it was healthy. And then in the 2040s, somebody said, yeah, but there's carcinogens in that product.
Yep, exactly. And this is one of the things, like,
at the end of the day, we didn't know. Right?
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
we even talk to people nowadays, like say take marijuana, cannabis. Cannabis is becoming very popular. A lot of people use cannabis both recreationally and
Yeah.
medicinally. There are people who still smoke cannabis, and they keep telling me that it's safer, it doesn't cause lung cancer, and I said,
I don't
no,
know about
you'd
that.
never smoke it. I always suggest to
Well, I
people to
understand.
use it, take it a different way. Right?
Well, to my understanding, those that smoke cannabis is not 100% cannabis. What they're smoking is 30% cannabis and 60% tobacco.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of different things in it, and I'd be very, very careful about smoking anything that gets into your lungs that's
Yeah,
could
yeah,
be considered a foreign substance in some
yeah.
way. Hey,
We're not
and then
built to
taking it
smoke.
another way, like gummies or
Yeah,
tongue drops or creams, and different ways of taking
but
cannabis
yeah, but
can
that
help you the same way.
but that's an example. Let's say that nothing to do with CPD, but let's say that something in the gummies that were put in there, you suddenly found was carcinogenic in 20 years' time.
Oh yeah,
Right? That could be the subject of a future class action lawsuit.
yeah. So people who taken CBD gummies all this time, and then they will be part of that.
Yeah, and we believe there to be nothing wrong with the product.
Hmm.
Yet, in 20 years' time, we find out there is.
Yeah, because people advertise these things. They say, "Oh, this is perfectly natural." I
Yeah.
said, "There's a lot of natural substances out there. I don't think people should be taking in, like lead, like lithium,
Well,
like things."
there's a natural substance that I'm not sure I would eat any day of the week. Is if I go out and stick a spade in my ground and pick up the dirt, I'm not going to start eating it. Yeah,
Yeah,
is it
exactly, exactly.
right?
Or
It's a
the worms
natural
that come with
substance.
them.
It's a natural substance, and in fact, actually, some of the things I look at, for example, a leaf on a tree or something. If a leaf happened to fall off and I picked it up, and I didn't know the impact of it, I'm more likely to go wash my hands before doing anything.
Yeah,
Because you don't know, that might be poisonous.
yep. You don't know, and this is something that, unless you absolutely know something, like
Yeah,
that's like people who pick mushrooms.
yeah,
Okay. Make sure you know what you're doing if you're going to
yeah,
go out and pick mushrooms. Like we've known mushroom people. We've worked with one before, and she used to go foraging for mushrooms, but she knew the difference between the ones that were good and the ones were not so
yeah.
good. Right?
Okay,
So
so
these are things that people learn over time. But
okay,
sometimes we don't know. Okay? Sometimes we think that something's good, but over time things start harming you. Okay? And it's one of those slow growth things. So that's why these class action lawsuits exist. Because at some point somebody said, I didn't know smoking caused cancer when I first started in high school. When I started smoking when I was in the 60s, I started smoking. And everybody was smoking at that
yeah,
time.
yeah,
Right? And now, then we discover, all the problems with it. And of course, the cigarettes manufacturers would tell everybody, oh, no, no, no.
not our product.
Yep. So they had to keep fighting it. And then the lawyers fought a good
Yeah,
fight for these things. So people now are claiming damages from smoking,
yeah.
from
And
class
there's a whole
action.
heap of things that have been found to be problematic. Okay, so if we're talking about class actions in Canada, um, there are quite a few going on right now. But one of the things is that you've got to be also aware that limitation periods might apply.
Yep. And certain ones, there could be limitation periods, and some of them are an ongoing thing, with ongoing cases of cancer, being treated for cancer, everything suspected be caused by certain types of items. And
Yeah.
other things are more limitation, like say, for instance, you had a factory that expelled all kinds of chemicals into the ground, and then they stopped operating maybe 10 years ago. Okay, then our discovery period afterwards, we start finding a cancer cluster around the place. Okay, then it has to be done within those discovery periods. Okay, there's usually
On the finding of the cancer cluster. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because you have to find the connection. Hey,
Yeah.
for those of you who watched Aaron Brockovich, hey, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. When they found this chemical spills in these two factories that were pouring chemical spills.
She found it. She found the
Yeah, she found it and she made a connection and she went out and talked to everybody and and then she learned this. And then of course they would go out and say, well, they would try to apologize and offer something small, but
and
what they're trying to do is set up a limitation period, okay, so that they don't get a whole bunch of massive people after them.
okay, limitation periods. Typically, limitation periods in Canada are 2 years. So, from the point of view of discovering that cancer cluster, what you're saying is that the first person who's going to be the originator of the class action lawsuit, John Smith, for want of a better name, when you're taking Smith and Bad Company X to court, John Smith needs to take his action within 2 years of the discovery.
Yeah, then other people join as soon as they discover A, of the class action suit and of their own issue that relates to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a very, like, what they do is they post these things. I'm sure you all saw the commercials where some law firm comes on TV and they talk about, say, asbestos or something like that,
Yeah.
about people and how they got affected over the years. And now we have a class action suit against these people. If you feel that you are affected by this, call this number. Okay?
Yeah.
And people can call that number. And but it's a very complicated situation. People think they can just get into a class action suit and somehow magically they're going to get a huge settlement at the end of it.
Well,
It doesn't happen so easily.
yeah, and in fact, actually, that was one of the things we were talking about beforehand, because with class action lawsuits, it's like you have to be a qualifying member in order to get
Yep.
anything from it.
You have to actually apply. You have to apply for the job of being a class action member.
I can't become a class action member in a broken foot lawsuit because I stubbed my toe.
Right.
Right?
Or can you be a class action member if you never smoked?
Exactly.
Okay.
So
you're
not going to walk away from Rothman's with $35 million and go, hey, I never smoked a cigarette in my life.
Yeah, right. These things have to be proven. These things, you
Yeah.
have to have medical documentation. You have to have all sorts of documentation to prove that A, you belong in that class action, and B, to show the degree of damages.
Yeah.
Some class action members may be affected less than other class action members. So there's usually a range of compensation that's approved.
Yeah.
Okay? And sometimes I think that there's some way that if you had an excessive amount like that where you feel that you go beyond the maximum, I think there's some way of going within that system. I'm not sure how that would work, but I've heard about that. Okay? But most people are within that range. And those are determined by the courts. And then they appoint someone to administer it. And then, okay, Billy Joe thinks he belongs in this class action. He files a claim. So there's a period of time you have to submit your claims. Okay? So they provide deadlines, and you have to put in your claims about what you're claiming and why. And then they go through that and they say, okay, this is what we need to know. And it goes through a lot of details. Okay? So each person would have a whack of medical documents, a whack of financial information, a whack of knowledge of interactions they had with the defendant, in some way, whether it's a product or whatever, all of that stuff. So a lot of these class actions are damages by the product when they are being used for what they were intended to be used for.
Yeah.
So this is why these class actions occur. It's not by people who are misusing the products or doing something.
You used it for the normal purpose of the product, right?
And I'm still waiting for people to do alcohol lawsuits because people are becoming addicted to alcohol.
Okay. Well, that's another one we can certainly talk about. Now, there is a current active class action lawsuit list, a database, and I'm going to give everybody the link in the comments so that anybody can go click on the link if
Yeah,
they
and go look it up. It's interesting.
yeah, go look up if you've got a condition that impacts you. Go look it up.
Or if you've taken a medication that you feel has caused wonky side effects that you're wondering what's going on, look it up and see if that medication is part of the class action.
Yeah.
Right? So some of these things you might still be open to submit a claim to. Some of them may not be.
Yeah. So CBA.org is actually the Canada Bar Association. So it's an independent organization, right? It's rather like the Law Society of Ontario. So there is just some of the resources that they offer. So their class action database. So you go to this website and you can actually you click the link, the button there, and you can search for your symptoms, the issues that you face.
Yeah.
Right?
Like say, for instance, you're concerned about a particular medication you took.
Yeah.
Right. And then like this is when what was that? When they had that medication that get the kids without arms.
Oh, thalidomide,
Thalidomide, yeah.
Thalidomide, yeah.
Thalidomide Survivors Association, and they had a hard time getting them to do compensation, okay? Because they had to fight. There was, I think it was Germany or one of the countries not Germany, but one of the countries they fought where they actually agreed to do some compensation for people. But I think when it came down to the States, it was becoming very difficult, and in Canada it was difficult. So people had to form an association of thalidomide survivors to push for it.
My understanding was that thalidomide was actually one of the original originators of class action law in America.
Yep. One of them, yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and just a bunch of, there was a certain percentage of pregnancies in which women took that ended up with defects of various types.
And the interesting thing, of course, is that both you and I are of the age bracket where, thalidomide might well have been considered by our parents had they been infertile.
Not infertile. It was morning sickness.
Oh, okay.
See, my mother was offered that, but she didn't want to take anything.
I thought it was infertility, but still, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for updating me.
Yeah.
All right.
My mother was offered that because she was getting sick, okay? And then, but she didn't want to take any pills for it because I forgot the reason. Because I would hate to think if she took it.
Yeah. I don't know anything about, my mother, but I do know I went to school with a couple over time. I went to a couple of schools with kids who were thalidomide. One person had a hand up their arm.
Yeah, I know a few. I know a couple of them.
It was kind of weird, but it is what it was, right?
Back in the 90s, I worked with a number of disability type lobby groups, and there was a Thalidomide Survivors Association in Canada, and I worked closely with them on a number of issues. And they were very much around the legal side of it to push for that type of thing. There was a later date when there was a use for thalidomide, but for something very different. Not for pregnant women, but for people who weren't pregnant, but would help them in other ways. And they did some research and came back and they kind of worked with the FDA, and apparently they were okay with it because this was not going to be used in a way that would endanger anybody.
All right. Let's visit back again the question about how class action lawsuits operate in Canada, because there are very distinct rules about this. First, starting with what qualifies as a class action lawsuit. There are some distinct rules about this. First of all, there has to be a cause of action, i.e., there has to be a recognized legal wrong. Some form some form of action that has been taken by the defendant that is seen by the courts as a wrongdoing, typically like a tort, like smoking, as we were talking about.
Yep.
It can be a breach of contract, and there's a couple that are considered through breach of contract.
Well, the basic income people went up for a class action.
Yeah. And it can, and the initial court documents or pleadings must show that there's a valid legal claim. It's slightly different for people who join the class after the class has been certified, but you still have to qualify.
To prove your own part of the claim.
Yeah, to prove that part of the claim. So the next element that comes into play here is there an identifiable class? So there has to be an identifiable group of people that show the same or similar characteristics for the legal against that one or single or group of defendants.
Mm-hmm. We all use this particular product, and this is what happened to us, and we're all going through the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, I took this new wonder drug called X, and now my stomach's out here and my arm's over here.
Yeah, it's a drug you should wonder about.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I know that was a ridiculous example, but you're becoming part of an identifiable class because all people who took this new wonder drug have got their stomach out here and arm out there, right?
Mm-hmm. There's usually something that goes on, and they're talking about things like where people are being at greater risk for certain conditions. I was talking to somebody today, and they were saying a drug called gabapentin is also on the class action list. Because we're finding that it increases people's risk for developing Alzheimer's and dementia. So these sorts of things, it's very important. Like people should look at these things and understand. If I'm taking a drug that's on the list, I'll immediately talk to my doctor about it and tell me to switch drugs or something. Because
there is that first of all. And when it comes to drug cases, that's your first and foremost thing is get yourself out of it. Go and talk to your doctor and make corrective action. If you're talking about like a breach of contract type thing, then usually the only way to get out of the contract is by using the class action lawsuit or doing on your own right.
Yeah, and often class actions too. You are given the choice, go along with the class action, or you can opt out of the class action and file your suit of your own.
Yeah.
You're usually given that option.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the next item on this list, that they have common issues or ailments. So, and in terms of the issue of smoking, it was clear that they were all dying from lung cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Or other forms of cancer, but cancer was high on the list.
Or breathing ailments, COPD, emphysema.
Yeah. And I was going to say some of the other things that are related to drugs can often be the same types of complaints.
Could be all sorts of things. Could cause all sorts of things.
Right. And the potential of what you said could increases the danger that you will get Alzheimer's or dementia as you get older.
Mm-hmm.
You may not actually have dementia or Alzheimer's right now, but you could potentially still be considered as part of that class.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something to look at, especially if you've been taking it for 20 years. Right? Yeah. Because some people have been taking it for a long time for various nervous disorders or pain. Okay? So there's a lot of different things that we don't know. Another class action is for OxyContin. Purdue Pharmacies.
Yeah.
How familiar are you with Purdue Pharmacies?
Well, I saw the documentary sometime last year, and I thought what they did was absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. This is another one when they went around and said that this drug was wonderful It treated pain, and people didn't even know they were in pain anymore, and it was non-addictive,
Yeah.
right?
Non-addictive like heck.
Yep, and then people were selling it on behalf of the pharmaceutical companies, and then
Yeah.
they got it into the doctor's hands, and the
And
doctors were handed free samples, and they were giving it to people.
yeah.
And then pretty soon, what we saw is people were starting to show signs of addiction coming back, and people, the doctors would prescribe it. Like, say you had injured your back at work, right? And it was pretty painful, and your doctor, it wasn't simply something you'd be taken care of by a Tylenol or something. So they had to use something stronger, and then gradually that person requires more and more to be able to obtain the same pain relief. And then pretty soon they become, there's some very dangerous
Yeah.
applications of these things, and have
Oh yeah.
die. People
That
die.
was that was a pretty harsh documentary about how they marketed this OxyContin, and it was pretty disgusting to my mind that they paid people to to do this sort of stuff. Obviously, the salesman who knows no better is probably in as much a victim as anybody else, but the people who are pushing it at the highest levels in that firm
Executive.
should be considered for going to jail.
Yeah, I think they should all go to jail,
Yeah,
but these people never go to jail. But you get these big class action lawsuits against them. Maybe that'll at least compensate people. So they've had to create a multi-billion-dollar fund. Eh? One of them, they had to fund some kind of program to help people get off these drugs and to treat them and educate people. The other one were they compensated victims.
yeah,
So it was incredible what they had to do. So what they did is they, through the courts, they get someone who's appointed to handle the class action suit and class action settlement. So X number of dollars comes out, and a certain amount of money is given to the administrator.
yeah,
And the administrator would get information from people who feel they belong to the class action. They send claims, they go through it, they ask them a bunch of questions, they go through their history and so forth. And through it, it determines how much money they might be owed through the compensation system. Again, some people have more mileage than others because some people were worse off than others as an impact of the particular situation. So it's very, or if you've lost a loved one to these things, this is another one. Like now we're seeing fentanyl deaths. Hey, I hope somebody goes after them. This is
yeah,
like, that's awful.
yeah. Okay, so those are common issues and ailments. We could probably spend an entire program talking about issues and ailments, couldn't
Yeah,
we? Right.
you can do your organ recital.
You probably aware of the issues and ailments that you might have, and you probably, if you've got them and you think yours might be part of a class action lawsuit, you probably ought to be talking to a doctor or a lawyer.
Hmm.
Right? Not something we can assist with, but certainly you need to have it further diagnosed. And WebMD is not your doctor,
Yeah, or is Google.
or Facebook.
Yeah, or Facebook. Facebook University is not what somewhere you could get a diploma or a degree from.
Yeah. Okay. The next element is that the court has to accept that what is being presented by the class is the most preferable procedure to actually resolve this issue. Right?
Exactly. Like, so that these things, you're not having somebody fight for something here and then another person fight for something there and another person fight for something there, all within it. But they put it together, they mash it together, that somebody is telling the same story.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why you have to get a representative plaintiff.
And it's not that hey, the cure for it by me is I can take Advil. The cure for it by you is that you take Tylenol. Right? Has to be that those will probably be close enough that they might be classed together, but the cure has to be not diverse. You know, my cure for it is I go and have burgers on a Sunday afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Like, for example, like for someone who's, say for those that, there is an HVAC scam that was going around and there's a class action suit going on against them.
Yep.
What's the name of that case there, Peter?
That's Finance It.
Yeah, Finance It,
Volt.
PSHS, Provincial Smart Home Services.
This one,
Bulk pay, yeah, bulk pay loans, yeah.
Right.
But they pay for.
And they're connected. They're connected to HVAC companies, which are known with the name of Provincial Home Services, and others.
Yeah, yeah, and this is one thing. We had a couple of clients who got involved with that, and we're still working with them.
Yeah.
It's a very, very complicated action because there's a ton of people who are affected by this. Okay? And when he's saying that the same solution doesn't apply, like we can't get somebody who says, okay, we will replace your whole HVAC service for free and then do it. And for everybody else, we will just wipe out the debt. And for other people, they'll compensate them. Right? You can't do it. You have to remedy them the same way.
Yeah.
So if we're going to remedy them the same way, we're going to give everybody some kind of financial compensation. That's usually the most common way of solving things.
Yeah, exactly. And typically when you do a lawsuit, financial compensation is there because there is no other form of compensation available.
Like sometimes there's equitable relief in certain cases, but financial compensation is the most common way.
Yeah. Okay, so a class action must be certified through detailed evidence and a submission from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there is also a representative plaintiff. So that is the person who is going to be, the named individual in the lawsuit.
Yeah, they have to figure out somebody who would be credible.
Yeah.
Okay, who is able to tell their story and be able to and have the different factors that were involved that you want to be able to attract and bring to the court. You have to have that. And somebody who's not like 94 years old who's ready to die.
Yeah.
You have to have someone who's going to be there for a little bit to be able to show the court that, yes, this indeed is happening. And yes, indeed, the defendants are guilty as charged.
Except guilty doesn't come into the play.
No, they're liable as charged.
Yeah. And the point about the representative plaintiff is because you have to know, you might know that, hey, that was a lawsuit won against Rothman's British American Tobacco and a number of other companies, but it would be commonly known in law as Joseph Smith versus Rothman's or whatever.
Yep, exactly.
It would have a legal name that can be looked up in a law law library.
Yeah, and the representative plaintiff shouldn't mind being named in a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of being a plaintiff, because the thing is, some people say, well, I don't want to go to court. A lot of people like that. But the thing is, a lot of this involves going to court. But other members of the class later on can apply once it's certified, and eventually most of these things don't actually go to a trial, right? Although some of them have, right? But most of them don't go to trial because a lot of times they present things, they go through a discovery, and then they say, oh, we're going to.
Yeah, exactly. So the question about detailed evidence and submissions from both sides, Joey Jones versus X Corporation. Joey Jones is just sitting there next to his team of lawyers, smiling through the whole thing. Right? He doesn't give evidence. He might have given some evidence in terms of the depositions, but a lot of the evidence that is being given in detail and the submissions that are being given by each of the sides will largely be, for example, in the smoking type situation, will largely be about expert evidence for those people who believe that smoking's bad for you and those people that believe that smoking's good for you.
Yeah, exactly. There's people that would be on it, or they deny that anything has ever been said by the company that would indicate an endorsement of smoking, which seems to be the more accurate picture that the Canadians companies have testified to in the recent one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because this is where you gotta be really, really careful, and this is where it's always interesting. I love reading these things because, some of them are interesting, and the thing is, there are specific law firms out there that actually do class action suits. Most of the work is class actions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Soto's class action, right?
Yeah, we went through a number of this.
Yeah, there's a few of them out there.
Yeah, but there's one or two of them which we're going to feature, which all came from Sotos. So I have to thank Sotos for this element of the program.
Yeah, I'd like to bring it on sometime.
Hey, this is a question that I've asked several times. How do I become involved? Hey, I got a problem. I want to become involved in it.
Yeah, I have had people show up at the office sometimes and says, I want to start a class action suit. And there's no class yet. These things take a lot of steps.
Yeah.
Okay? Are there more people like you? A lot of the research has to be done. There has to be a lot of groundwork. You advertise, you get people to talk to you. And I've done this before for law firms that were involved in class actions, where I'd go out and get affidavits from people, and I would chat with people. We'd do interviews, in-depth interviews, to be able to chart what they what the lawyers were looking for, and be able to do that so that the lawyers were satisfied that there was a class of people that could qualify for a class action suit.
Yeah, and actually, here's the question: we were talking to a bunch of tenants a while back who actually who were given extra pets in their homes by the landlord.
Pets. Oh,
extra
the landlord first of all says no pets allowed, but then they offer to give you pets instead. Is that the ones?
Oh, that's the ones. Yeah, that's the ones. Now there might well be now 49 out of 50 tenants that have all got these extra pets enforced on them by the landlord, but that doesn't make
feed them too.
But that doesn't make a class action.
Right.
But in fact, your skin is the feed, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they do eat your food. They go into your cupboards and eat your food.
The question there is, that doesn't make a class action suit.
Yeah, it's more legislative, okay? And besides that, most of these tenants, they have different landlords. And sometimes they come about it in different ways, where the tenant may have other problems too, in addition to the problems that they're introducing with the pets.
Yeah.
So this is why we sometimes have issues when, like Peter and I were talking about, if he would have got the whole building of tenants involved in one of our cases, we would have had a really good action about when the landlords offered to keep
about 300 people,
smaller pets like the cockroaches.
We would have had 300 people on that case. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And then we could have had them all there, add another $5 for each additional tenant, and bring it all in. And
but unfortunately,
tenant case.
But unfortunately, you can't run a landlord and tenant case that way.
Yeah, it's very, very different with that, because generally the landlord-tenant board has a process for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we just include all the tenants who want to be involved in it. We put their names in it. We add them, and then we represent them as a group. Usually we have a committee of tenants that would instruct us. Who would be their instructing council, whatever, for the people that represent the tenants. Maybe usually tenants associations would elect.
But again, that's not a class action lawsuit.
No, it's a very different thing. It's a very different thing.
Yeah.
But it's something that we could do. It's something we've done, or I've done. I've also fought against an AGI one time, where I've actually had a whole meeting with tenants, and we've met in a hotel ballroom.
Yeah, the AGI is AGI is also another example of something that could in some respects be classed as a class action, but it is not.
It is not.
The AGI, what is
legislative
happening
process.
is the landlord is saying, hey, I want all the tenants in my building to be paying 2.8% extra. And then what happens is they apply for an AGI, they eventually get a hearing, and those tenants that wish to oppose it can oppose it. Then it could be taken to a hearing, or it could be settled in an adjudicative case conference.
Yeah, 95% of their cases are settled in an ACC.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, actually, what will often happen there is that they will settle it in an ACC, and the landlord will go, well, actually, we've just thought again, we're not going to ask for 2.8%, we're going to ask for 1.7.
Yeah, exactly. We've got them to lower their extra demands.
Yeah. And they know that if they go to a full LTB hearing, they're going to have a lot, the one I did was about 300 pages of tenant evidence.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Right?
They were going to get a haircut anyway.
Yeah.
So they have to go and better negotiate it.
Yeah. And exactly. The last thing you want to do was kind of go up against these 300 pages of detailed evidence.
Yep. And we provide this. We actually will give them the 300 pages of evidence.
Yeah.
And then we'll bring our own people in and our tenants in with all their reports, to show that the management knew about tenant issues well beforehand, so we can prove that this was a maintenance stuff. So there's a lot of different things we've done. And they look at it and say, uh-oh, we're going to get a big haircut. In fact, I'm going to be bold.
In fact, even if they were to win, often at that point, it's better to settle.
Yeah, it's better to settle.
Kind of just
it costs a lot of money. They have to hire an engineer.
Yeah.
They have to hire a lot of people to be able to present their case and to show that this is capital improvements and not just maintenance responsibilities or cosmetic.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are done legislatively. Okay.
Right.
Again, that's not class action, but we could represent as a group.
Yeah, it's a group action. It's a group action that's happening in the landlord and tenant board. And those two that we just given are obvious examples of groups that are natural, right?
We did something like a class action a while back, because with ODSP, they have something called a special diet allowance that adds up, gives people an addition of up to about $250 a month extra per month if a person is found to require certain types of dietary additions, say, for their thing. So for a while, doctors were just filling it out what they need, and they would go there and they would get extra money, right? So there were some doctors that were holding clinics where people can go there and they just filled out the forms and people went out and got extra money. Then the government started saying, wait a minute, we're getting all these 300% increases of people asking for these things. So we're going to tighten this up majorly. So they tightened it up. And then after that, there was a lot of people with extra special dietary needs that were not able to get this extra help.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe they rooted out some of the crazy stuff, but
again, that's more a group than a.
Yeah, so what we did is we took a massive case under the Human Rights Tribunal, and we took this. This is called Ball versus the ministry. Ball versus the Director of Ontario Ministry of Community Social Services. So this was in 2010 when this was finalized. It was interesting because that was an interesting. I had a few people that I was representing through that, and we and afterwards we followed through on it. And now people could actually submit an application if they come up with something new that they need for special diets. So it's not something that's closed anymore.
Yeah.
So, but it was very interesting to do that. Again, that's not a class action suit, although over 300 people were involved in it.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a few, and these are all good and interesting things about becoming involved. And obviously it's up to you and your particular condition about this, but there's a couple of ones that we came across earlier on. Student loan discrimination against disabled people. This is a Canada-wide claim, right? This particular one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So And there's quite a few, there's kind of quite a few of these kinds of things, but student loan discrimination against disabled. So generally speaking, if you've got a disability, you are paying more on your student loan.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Next one I have here on the list is Philips CPAP machines. Right. CPAP machines, you'd think these are the machines that help you sleep when you have sleep apnea. Now, to be quite honest, I've always thought to myself, well, hey, those things look disgusting anyway. I can't see me even being able to sleep with them, but I don't suffer from sleep apnea.
Mm.
Right. I'm not a sufferer, so it's fortunate for that. But those that do suffer from sleep apnea, that's a horrible thing to have to go through, and especially if your machine is faulty. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So discrimination against disabled students on ODSP. It's another class of students.
Yep, and I'm looking at this where, yeah, this is where people receiving the Canada Student Grant, at one time this was considered exempt, but other people who received OSAP and living expenses, then what they did is deducted that living expense portion dollar for dollar from ODSP. Because remember, people on ODSP make too much money, okay? So they have to take that out. So, but anyways, now this is going to court where people have to be treated equally and they have to stop this.
Mm-hmm.
Stop this. They were not determined that this was improper treatment under Section 15. Everybody else who gets OSAP does not get it clawed back, and they do not get the living expense clawed back. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to school, okay, and if you're trying to work, there needs to be some balance. It's expensive to be disabled. And I think that ODSP often forgets that it's expensive to be disabled. So this is an interesting
Yeah.
one. I want to look into it more.
And we were talking about HVAC situations here. Finance It and VaultPay are two companies that we believe may well be interrelated, but they're companies that operate loans to organizations that actually provide intermediate, that are dealers for intermediary HVACs, pools, spas, windows and doors, and other forms of home improvements. And
Mhm.
basically, what happens is that you come, and used to be a lot of these companies would come to the door and they say, "Hey, your air conditioner is old. It's only 3 years old, but it's out of date and needs to be replaced." And especially actions against the elderly. And this one is a particular interest because Advocacy Center for the Elderly supports the class action lawsuit against Finance It and Vault Pay loans.
Yeah, you know about the HVAC ones that they used to knock on people's doors and that until Ontario outlawed it.
Yeah,
And now they don't knock on people's doors anymore. They call people on the phone and set up appointments.
yeah,
And then they find a way to stick their foot in your door anyway and tell you that you need more than what you originally agreed to have. It's a lot of false advertising. They say seniors get rebates, and they don't get rebates. They actually get ripped off more. So this is why these people are being taken to court. And then they find out, like, if you're renting a water heater from them, you can go to a Home Depot store and get one for about $800 to $1,000, a good one. Okay? But over time, all your rental period, you end up paying about $20,000 for the same thing.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's perfectly useless once the contract's over.
Well, and you see, your water tank you can get for $1,000, and your HVAC, your water heating system, $1,000 for a tank, $1,500 if you're using a tankless system, and you can pay for an actual, if you're buying outright an HVAC or a furnace and air conditioner, you can get them for typically for the average house about 4,500. So 5,500, gives you the best system possible there for for both types of systems, and you can probably get a better quality loan off your bank than you'll get off of some of these companies. I'm not having we're not talking about finance it particularly, but just you can get better loans out there than some of these companies do. And
exactly.
don't believe
You can go
issues.
to a local company that supplies and installs HVAC systems, and
Well,
then you can make a deal with them, and you're probably better off.
and the question here is, go get a deal. You could probably go get a deal from from somebody like Home Depot or Lowe's, or no, not Lowe's anymore. They don't exist. From somebody like Home Depot, who'll give you financing solutions through their own bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can often give you a better deal than some of these companies, some of these loan companies can that operate alongside these alongside these shady companies. Couple of other ones that I noticed here. This has got to be your favorite one, which is Pornhub.
Pornhub.
There's a Pornhub class action, which is alleged for illegal dissemination of intimate videos and photos. The action is on behalf of persons worldwide whose intimate videos or photos were posted.
Woo! Got to get off that OnlyFans page there, because they can catch that and put it on Pornhub.
You talked about Indigenous schools. Well, there's still an Indigenous school abuse class action in Quebec. And you probably also remember the Rogers credit check privacy breach that happened a couple of years back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So those are some of the current active class actions that are out there.
Yeah, because somebody gets upset about it, they post it somewhere on the internet, and somebody says, "Oh my God, that happened to me too." It spreads out, and then somebody offers to go to a lawyer and talk about it. Then this lawyer tries to fan the base and see what's going on, and then it ends up in a class action suit.
Well, I think another one that particularly disgusts me is actually youth detention centers strip searching their clients.
Oh yeah,
right.
Exactly.
That's disgusting.
It was like the women's prison, Grand Valley Institution for women, when they had males strip searching the females.
Yeah. And again, that's how. Well, it's wrong for a female to strip search a female.
Yeah, well, they shouldn't be. Like to do this, like when they're already in prison, they're not carrying contraband. Like this is so like the thing is, people in prison are not treated properly. Like they have to have rights while they're in prison. They're serving their time. And there's many countries where you have prisons and people are taking responsibility for things. And when they go out, they know responsibility and they're not going to do their crime again. But here, people are angry. They can't get out. They're discriminated against because they're a criminal. They can't get a job, can't get housing. So why not do another crime? They'll just go back to jail.
Another one that's here is Wildwood Creek condo project. Basically, cases being brought against the defendants because people who entered into a contract to purchase and sale relating to the condo were unlawfully terminated from their purchase agreements.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and this is Wildwood Creek in Collingwood. All right, so there you go.
Yep, this is there, Ontario. I mean, this is where this is always interesting. Like the Crown wards. Hey, there's a proposed lawsuit for Crown wards, people who were abused before, or during their Crown wardship. usually through under the supervision of Family and Children's Services or any of the other 50 Family and Children's Services across Ontario. They weren't named, but Ontario was named. And they
Mm.
were saying that they shouldn't have done that because they're implying some kind of vicarious liability of the government allowing this to happen so that people could do this. Like they used to just go to Criminal Injuries Compensation Board or make a report through, there was a board they could report to. But all of this stuff was taken away because I
Yeah.
guess Ford wanted to save money. Right? So
Another one here is Mini Cooper power steering issue. Right, many of these cars were diagnosed with having power steering issues, and the class actions being brought against BMW, the owner of the Mini Cooper, and of course Mini Cooper itself, on behalf of thousands of Canadian owners and lessees of a certain type of Mini Cooper.
hmm.
Right?
I always find these very interesting when they're doing this. There's all kinds of them on here.
You
Then
spend you
there's
spend your
more.
evenings looking up what do you call it, uh, class
Case law.
action lawsuits,
No, case law.
case law there.
Different things that are of different interest, because that's basically what I try to do. Like, why did they make this decision? And if they made this decision, does it seem to have any holes in it that could be appealed?
Yeah,
Things like that. Hey.
yeah. Well, I do that. I always do that about like the cases that I get back.
Yeah.
Right. So, anything else in relation to class actions? Any thoughts? Any final thoughts?
Well, the way they are, it reduces the cost for people to go through, on an individual basis. So you don't have to bring your own legal team to
Yeah.
try to suit. And it's one form of access to justice in certain circumstances when there is a class or there's a group of people who are all being affected the same way. Okay, and this is something that's interesting. I look at these things once in a while, and if I know somebody who's among my client base, I will send them an email just to let them know that there is a class action that they may want to look at.
Hmm.
Right? Because many things we couldn't do much more than that, but if they want to look at the class action, this would be a good thing for them to do because some of these things are challengeable.
Yeah.
Okay? It's very difficult though when you're looking at things like charter rights. Okay? Because charter rights are not generally looked at as being torts, but they're like charter infractions. Okay? But when you do charter rights, when even one person challenges something, they can actually make this enforceable across the board under the similar circumstances, as we talked about before with.
Things like disability, of course, are a charter right.
Absolutely. Although I'm starting to question because still, people with disabilities pay a lot more for everything. Like they pay a lot more for transportation, they pay a lot more for in housing for some respects,
Yeah.
a lot more for food in some respects, and other expenses they have that other
Well,
people
because
don't.
what you're doing is, of course, adding. You're saying that they pay more for food because, of course, you're adding the taxi fare to and from the supermarket to that.
And also too, you're not going to different stores and you
Yeah.
can't get the same deals. Like if you have a special going on at some supermarket across town, you just hop in your car and go. Or if you're
I never go to specials, but still, that's another matter.
yeah, there are people that do. I know a lot of them
I
do.
know, I know, I know of actually some. I
One of
used
them
to
was
know
my
this.
mother. She would go across the town and do it.
Well, I know this. I know this person who went to basics for one thing, and what do you call them? They went to about 3 or 4 stores because they got savings on this. And I said, yeah, but when you add all the gas price together for what you went for all these additional trips,
Hmm.
was it worth it?
Well, it depends. It depends on where the stores are and
And
where you're doing and what you're driving. If you're paying something with 6 liter, like yours, where you get like what is it, 6 liters?
No, mine's only 5.4 mine. But again, for example, if you weren't going by your own car, but if you were using a taxi instead, then the cost would ramp up.
Like, for example, it's $40 to go back and forth to the hospital if I had to visit or take a trip to the hospital. Okay. But if you drive in your own car there, I mean, outside of parking, okay, you have to drive for maybe $2, $3, $4, $5
Yep.
back and forth. I mean, this is where people have to think. It depends on, it's because you take a lot more trips.
Yeah.
And actually, the more trips you have, the more economies of scale you have.
Class action. Huh? You can see a class action.
Oh, really? Really? No, people with disabilities,
disabled versus
special transit, and that costs more money too.
Yeah.
You know how
Disabled
much wheel
people
sometimes
versus
costs in Toronto?
Yeah. Anyway, it's I'm just throwing that one in there. Right?
I know. Yeah, and this is where a lot of the problems, and this is where, but it's not just that either. It's housing too, finding accessible housing and getting accessible stuff done to your house.
Accessibility in housing is always a problem anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the thing. Life costs a lot more for people with disabilities, and they earn less. They earn roughly half the median income.
Yeah.
Right. So this is where people have to be aware of that when they're looking at people with disabilities.
All right. We're kind of massively over, Angela.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed this.
I know disabilities is one of your favorite topics, but I think we should
keep injecting the topic.
Pardon me?
You keep injecting the topic.
I keep rejecting the topic. Injecting, no. Okay, so if you need to contact Invictus Legal, or you need some legal advice, not necessarily about this subject, but about things in general, you can call us on 905-688-5598, or email Angela at weareinvictus.legal, or me at peter@weareinvictus.legal. Our website is weareinvictus.legal. There you go. And as a special for Angela.
Yeah, so what you heard today on Spin Legal, whether this show or others in this series, is not legal advice. So if you need legal advice, then please contact a paralegal or a lawyer. So don't start a class action suit against Spin Legal because you think it's legal advice.
Yeah. And I think that one would get turned down fairly quickly.
Very fast, because this is not legal advice.
Not legal advice here.
Okay, we do a lot of things on laws, but offering a legal opinion, you have to come in and talk to us.
Yeah.
Or talk to someone else like us.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. So it's not necessarily us, but somebody like us. There's always somebody that can help you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I guess that we'll be seeing you in a week's time. And have a great week.
Yep. And you might want to write to us and let us know if you'd like to see somebody, a guest speaker, or if you'd like us to talk about a certain topic you're interested in. Hey, we certainly like to hear from you. Okay?
All right. Bye.